So I'm starting. Hi, everybody. Hi. A couple of years ago, I made a statement that Portland and Oregon is my summer home because I visited there every summer for several years. So I love Oregon. I love Oregon.
Oregon loves you too.
I love Oregon. Oregon is so progressive that every time I try something new, I start from Oregon. If it works in Oregon, it works. If it doesn't go anywhere in Oregon, then I better think differently. So you are always my experimentation. Take that as a compliment. So this is also an experimentation because you are ahead of the curve. I cannot bore you to death. So we are going to do something different and really good to see you. I'm at NYU at the heart of New York City, Manhattan. Later on, there is a slide that says that there are 3 jurisdictions in the US that are anarchist jurisdictions. Do you know which those cities are? I can just say it. Portland, Oregon. You're one of them. And we keep you company, New York City. So we cover New York City and Portland. Which do you think is the 3rd anarchist jurisdiction?
Seattle?
Yes. That's how bad we are. So we are just very progressive.
Good company.
A good company. If you don't believe it, Ellie, allow me, okay? If you don't believe what I just said, I'm going to start from there. Here. Department of Justice designates New York City, Portland, and Seattle as anarchist jurisdictions. It's real. So we are in good company to push the field. All right, here we go. So here is we are going to do a little bit differently today. It's a science learning. And we are going to actually just have a conversation, all right? It's a conversation. Science learning, language learning, and computational thinking, which goes into COVID-19 and systemic racism. And then I will get to Biden and Harris 4 priorities from day 1 of the new administration. And you are going to say, what? Wow, so I hope that we get there. We are not going to talk about language as a part of a science instruction. Am I sharing the screen? No. You're so kind. Okay, we are not going to talk about language as a part of a science. This time, we are going to talk about language learning as a part of a computational thinking. So we are going to the next generation. Here is a framing of the presentation, and Ellie is taking the lead, but I'm going to ask Ellie to introduce yourself when the time comes. It's always really important to think about the framing of the presentation because the framing is like the phenomenon and problem. If the phenomenon is not compelling, you're going to check out. I don't care about it. I'm not interested in it. Bye-bye, Okhee, and I lose. So I have to make the framing so compelling. Framing, and then just really briefly of it's a review of a sale, science and language for a couple of minutes, but we are going to spend a lot of time on this one. And then we move on to what next with the new administration. And I'm going to keep the best to the last so that you are not going to leave. That's the hook. We do all know that instructional shifts of a framework, and Oregon is one of the first states that adopted. I don't have to say it, except that I can say in one sentence that students are explaining phenomena and designing solutions to problems by engaging in 3-dimensional learning as they blend the science and engineering practices across cutting concepts and disparate core ideas, and their understanding progresses over time. I said it, that's what we struggle for, K through 12 science instruction in one sentence. That's unpacking, that's the key. But this is something that I would like to share. So it's a traditional and contemporary, and we are moving really contemporary. Scientists and teachers define the knowledge of a science discipline, which typically was written in books. And this is what science educators really like when I say that it's typically written in books. And literacy people say that kids have to know how to read and write. And literacy is the bully. And then you're going to say, wow, that's right. When literacy should be the buddy. We'll be writing about how literacy is a bully to science or STEM. And then science was given to students, and science made sense to some students, but science didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of students. You are the exceptions of science made sense to some students. This time, it's all students, partly because the demographics changed when the NGSS came out. So it's a demographic change, all students, but also being part of the NGSS diversity and equity team, it was my charge to say all standards, all students. So I'm a strong advocate of it should be all standards, students. Students are making sense of phenomena in science and designing solutions to engineering, and then students are doing science and engineering. So here's my thinking. Let me just share in one thought. Traditionally, you can think of students serving the master of the science because I am following what teachers tell me to do. The contribution of the NGSS is that now students are making sense of phenomena as participants, student part of. When Ellie is going into computational thinking, my image is that students are the masters giving command to your agents. It's just amazing that it was a 2010 to 2020, one decade, starting from 2020 with the remote instruction. Students are the masters giving commands to robots and artificial intelligence and Scratch and all that. So just keep in mind, it's every decade it's changing. So you're going to be the master today. Taking a seat at the table. So it's not just COVID-19 frame our discussion very differently. The table language, people say that students have to know how to read a science textbook. Literacy is the key, and I say it's the bully. And by the way, literacy gets a full cookie, math gets half of the cookie. By the way, social studies gets some, but science gets some crumbs, and computer science is a new kid on the block, but they have no problem of barging in because we are so prominent and powerful. So and then we could say, oops, we forgot the students. So who are they? Like that. So we are going to the same thing of flipping. This time, why don't we start from students, English learners, the students with disabilities, the students with poverty, and why? So there is one good thing about the COVID-19 that the way we are doing. For example, we are giving in-person instruction for students who need additional support, like English learners, students with special needs. And pedagogically speaking, that is the right thing to do. It's the right path because we are meeting the needs of students. But when you think about the English learners and students with disabilities, that's also accountability because the schools and districts are accountable to report all the additional support. So both pedagogically and in terms of policy, that's the right thing to do. And I'm just proposing the idea that can we take that the same approach of the system is promoting and requiring the accountability, and pedagogically we provide the support. Can we do that after COVID-19? The same thing, we give a technological devices. Then we say disciplines take the seat and literacy is serving the disciplines. I say that, I apologize for anyone who is a literacy person. I say literacy is not even a discipline, it's a skill. It's a skill. Skill should serve the disciplines, and then the disciplines should invite the students to do the disciplines. So I am, with my smile, I'm just hitting it hard with that. We need to flip it. We need to think very differently. And COVID-19 is an opportunity to think very differently. So that's that, science and integral language, and I'm stopping, share stop. Oh, hi everybody, Bradford, and I see a lot of friends. Really good to see you. But taking next step, Ellie, your turn.
Excellent. Can you hear me and see the slides okay? Excellent. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Allie, and I am just thrilled to be here because Okhee has talked about her Oregon connections forever, to a point where it's a joke in our office about how much she loves all of you. So I'm thrilled to get to meet you finally. I've been working with Okhee for the past decade, which is crazy. But most recently, I led the writing of the sales CTM curriculum, which we're going to start talking about today, as well as implementation of that project, which is why I'm here today. So for the next two
Ellie,
topics,
if I may say, Ellie is a good friend of Rita Genosek. They spend so much time together.
Rita, I can't speak highly enough. Yes. Rita, boy, we spent a lot of time writing curriculum together. So, for the next two topics of this presentation, we want to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing with our teachers and students. As Okhee mentioned in the beginning, we want to spend the most time on topic 3, which is sales CTM, but it's important that we first introduce SAIL so that you understand SAIL before we talk about sales CTM. So we're going to start briefly talking about a quick overview of SAIL. So SAIL stands for Science and Integrated Language. SAIL is a development project that is funded by the National Science Foundation. And in SAIL, we at New York University, in collaboration with Stanford, we work to develop and implement a year-long, 5th grade, NGSS-aligned science curriculum. So really, when we're talking about SAIL, we're talking about a 5th grade science curriculum. Now, in this year-long curriculum, we developed 4 units, which you see on the slide here. And I get really excited when we talk about these and I see these units because we worked really hard to choose phenomenon that would be exciting and motivating to all students. So in Unit 1, students engage with the phenomenon of garbage and ask what happens to garbage. In Unit 2, students get to know this tiger salamander and figure out why this tiger salamander disappeared in a vernal pool in their local community. In Unit 3, students think about water and they ask, why does it matter if I drink tap water or bottled water? And then finally, in Unit 4, students figure out, why do falling stars fall? Today, we're going to focus on Unit 1, our physical science unit in both SAIL, but also SAIL CTM. And that unit focuses on what happens to our garbage. We are excited to report that our curriculum was reviewed by Achieve and was awarded the NGSS Design Badge as an example of high quality NGSS design. And the unit is freely available online if anyone wants to download and take a look at it. So if we were to summarize kind of the main takeaways of our SAIL philosophy, we'd really talk about 3 instructional science shifts. I just want to briefly talk about those 3 shifts now. So the first shift is engaging students in phenomenon. In all of our units, students engage with local phenomenon that is meaningful and relevant to all students, but in particular, English learners or ELs. In the first unit, the phenomenon is our school, home, and community make large amounts of garbage each day. And this leads to the driving question, or the big overarching question that students are trying to figure out over the course of the unit: what happens to our garbage? The second shift is 3-dimensional learning, science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts. Here on the slide, you see that students are engaged in their own lunch garbage. This was pre-COVID. And as the students engage in this garbage, their own lunch garbage, they ask a lot of questions, which is asking questions is a science and engineering practice. So they're thinking about and asking, what happens to our garbage in the real world, and what happens to our garbage in the classroom? And as they sort the garbage, they talk, asking questions like, do you see this? Yeah, it's the same as this. So the point here is that students use language to do the practices. The science and engineering practices are language intensive. And finally, the third instructional shift is coherent science learning progressions. So in our units, students develop their understanding over time. the lessons work together to create a logical storyline. Let's quickly look at this storyline of the garbage unit. So as you saw in the slide previously, first, students engage with their lunch garbage. They sort the garbage according to properties. And after students sort the garbage, they take a virtual landfill trip, and they ask a whole bunch of questions, and they decide to make a physical landfill bottle model, which you see on the slide. As you see, the students put a bunch of garbage items, things like food items, plastic spoons, aluminum foil, into open and closed landfill bottle jars. Students do this so that they can observe the property and the weight changes in both the open and closed systems over time. Then students weigh the landfill bottles and they realize that the open system weight decreases, but the closed system weight stays the same, even though the food items look like they started to disappear. This is a big moment for the students that blows their mind. And as they observe the landfill bottles, students realize that they smell something horrible coming out of the bottle. And so they investigate this smell, and they figure out that smell is a gas, and that gas is something made up of particles. And finally, students figure out what's causing the food items in the landfill bottle to decompose. And so using the agar plate investigation, which you see here on the screen, the students figure out that these things called microbes are causing the decomposition. So the point to all of this is that the lessons here work together to tell a coherent story over time. So this brings us to SAIL CTM, or topic 3, which, if you can't tell, I am most excited to talk about with everyone today. So SAIL CTM is an extension of SAIL, which you just heard about. So the CTM part stands for computational thinking and modeling. So in the SAIL CTM project, we integrated computational thinking and modeling into our regular SAIL curriculum. We had an amazing team to do this work. We at NYU worked with MIT and Vanderbilt. So SAIL CTM stands for Science and Integrated Language. That's the SAIL part, plus computational thinking and modeling. That's the CTM part. And the purpose of this project is to expand and refine SAIL by integrating CTM with all students and integrating this into kind of typical science instruction. The project builds on the work of SAIL as well as Star Logo Nova, which was designed and built by MIT. So SAIL CTM is really unique because it integrates programming and coding into typical science instruction with all students. This is not an after-school program. This is their regular, typical science instruction. To do this work, we use a software called Star Logo Nova, or SLN as we abbreviate it. And Star Logo Nova is an agent-based programming environment that uses blocks-based programming to computationally model ideas about the real world. Okay, so what does that all mean? Well, on the left side of the screen, you see kind of typical programming language that you might see in Java or C++ or Python. And on the right side of the screen, you see that same code, but using Star Logo Nova. So notice how there are actual blocks for students to manipulate and build and nest, and also that the language is more familiar. So for example, in that blue block there, you see things like set my color to red. Okay, so we've been talking for a while, and our philosophy is that experience comes first. We really like our students to experience a phenomenon, for example, rather than just pre-teaching vocabulary. And so we thought we would try something new. As Okhee said, the Oregon experience. We want to do the same thing today. So instead of just talking at you at Star Logo Nova, we hope that you will bear with us and be willing to try and experience a little bit of Star Logo Nova for yourself. So I'll wait for you all to be like, woo, yes, we're so excited to do this. So you are going to be, to do this task, you're going to be assigned into a breakout room of a smaller group. And you're going to complete the Star Logo Nova orientation activity. So this link to the activity is in the chat box right now. And while I'm kind of talking, if everyone wants to try and open it and make sure it's a PDF document, just to make sure that it's opening and working for you, you can do that while I introduce this. And the task here is that you want to make elephants, hopefully, eat apples in this program. So that's your goal for today. Now, just to clarify, each person should develop your own model on your own computer. So even though you're going to be working in a small group, it works best if everyone can do the model on their own computer. And then, of course, you'll talk with your group as you do the activity, but if you have your own model, you'll get to experience a little bit more. Okay, so to clarify kind of what the directions will look like, when you pull up this document, hopefully you're having it up already, the visuals are on the left and the directions in words are on the right. So for example, the first thing that you're going to do is create a Star Logo Nova account. So on the red in step 1, it talks you through everything you need to know. So for example, in a web browser with an internet connection, navigate to this website. And then on the left-hand side, it has an image, which will be particularly helpful when you get to the code. And you'll just follow the step-by-step instructions. So a couple of things, reminders before we get started and kind of shuffle you into the breakout groups. Also, as we're doing these, make sure everyone has the PDF open, that no one's having any issues. Happy to help if you are. First, remember that each person should develop their own model on your computer. It's more fun that way. Second, do not panic. If you are thinking, I have no prior coding experience and are having a wave of panic, don't. I'm here to tell you that we have given you every single step-by-step instruction, and we do this with students. So breathe and go slow and follow the directions. And I think you'll find that you're better than you think you are at this. Also, third, just to give you a heads up, you are not going to finish the entire activity. So I don't want you to, I say this because I don't want you to open this document and panic at how long it is. I wanted to share some additional things that you can look at after the session. But today we're just going to give you 15 minutes. So you'll probably only finish a few of the parts, maybe get to some of the challenges, and that's totally fine. Also, we'll be shuttling across the breakout groups to help. If you need anything, just holler. And the last thing before I open it up and break you into the great breakout rooms, think like a student is your challenge today. So I know it's hard as adults to play, but one of the coolest things about Star Logo Nova, especially when kids do it, is that they go crazy. They hit all the buttons. They try everything. They don't stress out about step 1, step 2, step 3. So I challenge you to take that approach too. You can't mess anything up, I promise. Go for it, have a little fun, and holler if you have any questions. Okay, before we launch into breakout groups, does anyone have any questions that we can tackle before? Oh,
I saw a question in the chat.
Yes. Is this a version of Scratch? Great question. So, there's 2 questions though. So the first, is this a version of Scratch? Scratch is also a block-based programming. Star Logo Nova is like Scratch's cousin. We'll talk a little bit later about how Scratch is a little bit different from Star Logo, but yes, you're on the right track that they both use block-based programming, and we'll talk about what makes Star Logo different after you experience it for yourself. Does it matter which browser we use? All 3 are choices. The short answer is no, it does not matter. You can do this in any browser. However, I do not recommend Internet Explorer. If that's all you have, that's fine, but it doesn't matter. Any other questions? These are great. All right, well, good luck. May the programming forces be with you. And we'll call you back again in about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, so you can keep track of time. Have fun.
Okay, I'll set our timer for 12 minutes and we'll see how we're doing.
Yeah,
All right,
that's perfect. That's perfect.
I think you're going to be like yanked right into your breakout room, but if anyone's still here, I can help you get in. So. Oh, and I do have some unassigned folks. I'm going to move you now. Sorry, I think we had some people join after I built that. There we go.
How'd it go, Kate, while we're waiting for everyone to come back?
I'm first.
Is it okay?
I did one thing. See, I don't have the word.
Yay!
I'm an EL with television.
No, that's perfect. That's what we like to hear. That's excellent.
Yeah, we helped each other out.
One thing is good. That means you had some success. That's great. Hi, everyone. I know you're kind of getting shuttled back. I just want to open a discussion for a few minutes about how this went for your small group. So in the chat box, take a moment and just enter your thoughts. How did it feel as a learner to complete the Star Logo Nova orientation activity? It's interesting, in the groups that I was in, there's varying levels of experience, so it'll be interesting. So take a moment and share your thoughts in the chat box, and we'll discuss here a few of them before moving on.
Oh.
Excellent. These are great. Does anyone want to share out one of the comments that they wrote? I see we have a range from tech phobia to it was fun and great, which is the range that we expect with something like that. Does anyone want to share out how the experience went for them?
Sure. Well, I had, I don't know, at some point a couple of years ago, I did like a little Scratch class. So that's where I was like, oh yeah, I think I did something like this like a while ago. And what was surprising was like, I was like, I still have no clue what I'm doing. Like it was really just like step by step by step by step piecing things together. So I didn't have a lot of background experience to draw on.
Yeah, that's great. Very cool. Maybe one more person that wants to share.
I really like how they make it into a puzzle. And like Molly was saying, it's just really visual with the colors, and it's really easy to remember like which category you need when it's color coded like that.
Yes. That is perfect. That's actually one of the strengths of STAR logo itself and any kind of visual programming like this. So you just experienced, and I was talking a lot, some of you are familiar with programming like this, but exactly just like you were saying, STAR Logo Nova is a powerful tool for our students because it's block-based. So like you saw, you can actually manipulate blocks. So for example, you could draw an agent block or a collision block. It's also agent-based. So that means that you actually create and develop agents. So you developed an elephant and an apple, and you take the perspective of that agent when you're modeling. So for example, if you're creating an elephant, you have to think about what are the traits of that elephant going to be, and what are the behaviors of that elephant going to be. And finally, the model is STAR Logo Nova is data focused. And I'm bringing this up particularly to answer the question that we said we'd answer a little bit later previously, the question about how is STAR Logo Nova the same as Scratch? So one of the things that makes STAR Logo a little bit different from a program like Scratch is its ability to make graphs and data boxes and things like that that students can track and function. So I want to put a small disclaimer there that we do a lot of things to make CTM accessible for students. So today we just had you do a blank starter model project. We would not do that with students. That's something we do with our teachers, but not students. For the students, we give them things to begin with, things like a starter model that you see on the screen that is kind of a base project that they revise and work with so that they don't have to deal with some of the more complicated parts of the model. We give them things like reference guides or little sheets that help them with more complicated coding, things like procedure blocks where we can make really complicated code a little bit more manageable for them. So there's a lot of things that we do to help students make this realistic. So I want to talk now to how we use computational models in science instruction, because what's cool about our work is that students aren't developing random models. Rather, students are developing computational models in the service of science learning. So in the garbage unit, students developed 3 models, the physical landfill bottle models, which we discussed earlier. They also developed the diagrammatic models of the landfill bottle. And finally, they discussed and developed the computational model of the closed landfill bottles. So we found that students were really struggling to understand how microbes in the closed landfill bottles were decomposing that solid banana. And we used the computational model to help with this. So let me show you one of our students' computational models. In this model, the student had 3 agents. So first they made the microbes, which you see here are the triangles. Then they made the banana solid in the middle, made up of little pieces or particles, and then the banana gas. And what's interesting is when they ran the model, the microbes, they collided or hit the banana solid. They deleted the banana solid and created one banana gas. And then they tracked these through data boxes. And so they saw that when they ran their model, while the weight of the banana solid went down, the weight of the banana gas increased, although the total weight of the closed system stayed the same. Okhee, I am wondering if you want to pause. Do you want, instead of jumping to this, so we don't run out of time, do you want to jump to the next, or do you want me to keep going?
Jump. We'd like to cover and then.
I agree. So why don't we jump to your topic and I'll let you share and then we can have a little bit of a discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So we are getting into, I'm taking the screen, and thank you, Ellie.
Yep.
We knew, colleagues, we can see that you are part of the experimentation. It was a really fun listen to the conversation with my team. What is important, a couple of things that Ellie did, and Ellie actually gives me the command because I don't know how to do the STAR Logo Nova, and she tells me, Okhee. I say, I don't know. It's a very, very humbling.
Okay, I'm interrupting you because
I know.
I'm seeing the chat boxes, and the response that students can make their own PhET. That's exactly, you've responded the whole purpose in one sentence. So yes, and it's awesome, and you should have kids do it. They think it's really, really cool. So you can go again, Okhee, but that comment made me excited. And I'll put the title of the banana model so you can, and give you a link if you want to run it.
Okay, I would like to have some discussion at the end. So I would like to comment on two things. One is that we actually, Ali took the lead, worked with the 5th grade teachers and 5th grade students, and their response is absolutely amazing. The second is that Ellie, when you see the slides, Ellie has English learners giving command to the computer and speaking with one another and talking through. I saw Jennifer and Lori talking to yourself and saying, don't do that, do this, drag it down. Language is so essential, more so in computational thinking than science instruction, because you are interacting with a computer. That's the second. And the third is that we are not doing coding. We were very lucky to work with our colleagues at Stanford and Vanderbilt and MIT, where their philosophy is that we are not teaching coding. Coding comes as a product, but we are using coding and program in the service of science. The same thing with the language educators that we work with. Students will learn language as a product, but we are not starting from language, grammar, and vocabulary. So there are more and more people from both language and computational thinking who will say, these are tools to do disciplines. So I just wanted to make it so clear. No, this is a tool, just like language and computational thinking as a tools to do. So framing it, where are we going with that? This is where we were. When you look at the 3rd unit on plastic pollution, do you see that? Flatten the curve. Don't pollute the earth because it's going to harm us and animals. Flatten the curve. These all that. Well, around April, this came out. Do you see it? That's the virus. Why do we do the lenient distancing, limited distancing, moderate distancing, and a lot of extensive distancing and isolation? Because that is that if you let it free for all, what will happen? A lot of people get sick and some of them die. Some people get sick, and this is a very healthy people, extensive distancing, okay. So this is where all the politics and science comes in. How much distancing do we do without killing the economy and keeping people healthy? The whole thing, it goes into social studies and civics, and it's just such a powerful phenomenon that we are trying to think of. So here is data science of, where is that? It's a Johns Hopkins University data. It's just amazing if we have a chance, and all you have to do is click the button and the dashboard comes in. And this is as of when? November 10 or something. And that's the cases of 50 million people in the world were affected. And it'll say 1 million and about 1.5 thousand people were dead. When you look at the down, it'll say that US cases make up about 20% of the infections in the world. And US population is only 4% of the world. We are outperforming, we are overachievers by 5 times. The same thing with the death. US death is 5 times, about 20% close of the world population. It's a data. And then there is a computer science about why do we do the social distancing? How do we reopen schools? And do you see this graph? This is Korea, virtually nothing, 500 people out of a 50 million population. Germany belongs here. These are European countries. And do you see the US? We never flatten the curve, we never. And it's exponentially spreading. I mean, it's a mind-boggling. And then we are thinking about why this is related to income gap. if you don't have resources, 10 people live in an apartment, then you just cannot do social distancing. You have to do the essential workers. And if you're in be institutionalized in prison like that, you simply cannot afford to do what we mandate of mask wearing and social distancing and stay home and all of that. So it becomes such an issue of science and systemic racism together. Do you see that? Data science and computer science and the data related to us. This is what makes us very exciting. Now, New York and Portland and Seattle, we are good company, all right? That's why I love you guys. Here is what I would like to say about what's happening. This is a 46th president. I'm not going to say who yet until we declare the winner. Okay, I'm joking about it. There are 4 priorities. It starts from COVID-19, economic recovery, racial equity, and climate change. Because it is affecting minorities, and it's affecting minorities in terms of income. Climate change is in because it is affecting pollution. What is really interesting and exciting about it is that science is at the center. Science was the villain for some time, but science is going to be the core along with economy and racial equity. So my question to you and to us together, even the climate change is written as environmental justice. It's about the justice and who is affected. So here is a question to all of us. And that is, when science disciplines get the attention for what? COVID-19 and climate change, what is the role of a STEM education? What do we do? What do we do? We talk about vaccine and all of that, but where does STEM education stand? And unless we figure this out, someone else will tell us what to do and we may not like it and we say, too bad, because you didn't take an action and initiative. So I'm advocating our Oregon colleagues. What is your vision? Think of the people who did a protest. What kinds of a protest do we do to make a STEM education to play a role and at the center of a new normal? So I end that, and we have about the 3 minutes. Ellie, I spoke a lot more than with my passion. Okay. So you, any comments? You were young. Go ahead.
I was just going to add something that we're doing at our school is we have a buddy system. So for example, like just doing a read aloud to they're creating social justice, picking a children's book and reading it aloud, and then they're sharing it with the younger kids. But doing fun like this coding activity with their buddy class, but really making the older kids, our middle schoolers, feel like they have that voice to express the change that we need, educate them so that they can educate the younger ones. It's an example of what we're doing.
Thank you.
And I have one other comment too, and that is, I feel like part of the reason we have a lot of people who question what's going on and just question the science behind everything is because we've essentially, science hasn't been a big priority because of the other testing that's been going on. And I mean, science and social studies, those 2 subject areas that could help teach students how to, one, figure out the difference between what's real and what's not, what's credible information, what's not credible, what's reliable. We haven't really been doing that because we've been so focused on reading, writing, and math for those reading, writing, and math's sake. Reading and writing and math has always been in service to answering questions and solving problems. And we need to really get the priority back to that because we've lost it because of the testing, which really hasn't been helping teachers much.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I just really like the idea that Ash put in the comment about sort of flipping the script so that language arts can be used in service of STEM. I think that's a great way to frame it and a great sort of one-liner for us to take away to share with our colleagues and leaders in our districts.
I see Susan and other people. So here is my pushing. Remember that Portland, Oregon has been young people going on the street doing protests. If we are taking that approach, what would it be our charge for adults doing something comparable? When I think about the current administration, and I'm not really talking about the politics, but just in terms of the data. And so COVID-19 was a hoax, climate change, we withdrew from the international coalition. We hope that we don't have a racial problem in our nation like that, right? Okay. And economy is doing great, and economy is doing great because the rich people are making money. Billionaires made so much money. Anywhere from $500 billion to $1 trillion during the 4 years, while we have so much unemployment. So if the science is at the center, then what would it be the science education? Something that we could think of is using science disciplines like data science and computer science as a means to the science. You know, when I think of COVID-19 and data science and computer science, may I say, it's almost like that I'm just thinking about, wow, that could be the foundation for the next set of standards. NGSS provide a foundation and the next set of standards. So I wanted to play a role, and that's why I'm pushing COVID-19. And multiple disciplines are coming together. And why climate change is a real issue of racial inequity. Why COVID-19? So my punchline is that when we say Americans are dying of 500,000, I mean, the 250,000, it's not Americans dying generally, it's minorities are dying. That's why we don't care about it. So one last thing that I'm thinking of using the 4 priorities from the website. It's a 2 different systems of thinking. One system of science playing so little role and a villain to science playing at the center of the role for many things. So we are taking 2 different sets of systems of thinking. And I'm asking you to think about what role that we would like to play. You, coding, programming, data science, complex problems, systemic racism, these are all moving forward. And I'm really pleased that Biden would use systemic racism in his, when he made he said that, yeah. So I would like to ask you to visit Build Back Better website, Build Back Better. And there are 4 priorities, and you are going to see the systems of thinking where the 4 priorities are all interrelated, and not as one at a time, but interactively. So you can see why I love Oregon, because you are doing that protest on the streets just like young people. You're going to be at the front. Yeah, our kids are the future and they will take it, but we need to provide. So I consider that we are transitioning from NGSS solid to the future of several years later of then what? And climate change and COVID-19 are very complex societal issues that require multiple ways of thinking. It's not just one. And anyway, I spoke, and I hope that I made sense to you.
Thank you, Okhee. Thank you, Allie. This was really, I feel like my mind just blew open when I saw that you were creating that model of the gas in the container and thinking about there's just countless ways that we could use that idea of computational modeling. And for me personally, this has always been that missing piece that I didn't totally have with NGSS. So I love that you're bringing that to the forefront to think about those intersections of computer science, NGSS, and it works great with distance learning, you know, so how to bring it all together. So thank you so much.
So Ellie would say, and Ellie really is an expert, but Ellie would say that we are using computational thinking in service of a science learning. So when we use a model, computational modeling is at the right time when it is needed, like microbes are too small to see and students cannot see them. So it's a way to explain why of a cause and effect. In the ecosystem, it is about the multiple systems and it's much more complex. When it comes to engineering the bottle pollution, it's how do you design, because it is too complex to do anything to do in a classroom. So how do you design given such amount? When it comes to solar system, it's too big to see. So how do you make it available? Computational modeling. So it's not learning about coding or programming, using computational modeling in the service of the science. So just like English learners are doing science and they are learning language as a product in the service of.
Okay, something we should have added is that on Star Logo Nova, now that you all have accounts because you created them, you can search any project that's in a public gallery and remix it, which means just save a new version and modify it for your own classroom. So things like the banana model, you can use that and there's a lot of resources on there too. So just wanted to throw that out before we leave.
Oh my gosh, I've been so enthralled with this. I completely forgot to share a link to our exit survey so that I know, sorry, it's after 5. Hold on. I'll grab it for everybody. To get your PDU for attending, that's coming in the chat.
And again, thank you so much. I love our Oregon colleagues. Do you think we should continue doing the presentation or should we stop? Can you do yes or no? Yes, we'll take it to the road with your blessing.
Yes, it's powerful.
With your blessing. Ellie and everybody, I see Lori and Susan, I saw Bradford. We'll be happy to stay on for a little bit longer if you would like to have the conversation. Like how do we scheme to make it happen like that in Oregon? Scheme in a positive. We'll stay on. You don't have to continue, but it's going to be just a discussion. Wow, everybody's staying. So let's have a conversation for another 10 minutes or 15 minutes if you would like to stay. Just ask questions or have a discussion.
Yeah, I have a question. This really brings up a big issue for me, at least in our district and probably everywhere, is how do we convince our administrators? I mean, we at least a few years ago, Oregon was 50th in the amount of time elementary classrooms spent on science, and we probably haven't improved much, and certainly not in our district. It's gotten even worse in our district. But this is really a very frustrating and thing in an area of passion for a lot of teachers. I know that there's more control, especially at the elementary level, more micromanagement and more emphasis on straight reading and number of minutes spent on reading. And no matter what, it's been very difficult to convince the people in charge that it's through science and social studies that we should be reading, not setting them to the side, right? So I don't know about you guys, but that's my struggle, is what can we do now to try to convince people and show people, and I don't know.
So Lori put down it's a test, and I have one thought about that. Tests. I'm just thinking that last year we did not have the test because of COVID-19. We didn't have the test. this year we may not have a test given this, we may not. 2 years with no testing is a big deal. And then I know that new administration says we don't want to push testing too much. That is his approach, not too much. So those are all the reasons. And one last thing, US is just very good at pendulum from one end to another. Because we went all the way to one end, just by the function of the US society, which is really funny. It may just go back simply because of tradition of going back and forth. I'm just joking about it, but it is true. So we may take advantage of 2 years of no testing, possibly. And then the administration moving that way, and it could. I mean, it could.
I was going to say, I have a few thoughts of what's been happening and what we might be able to do. Okhee, a couple of years ago, I tried to have an event at NSTA and brought state leaders and principals and teachers together about the problem of the lack of time for science in Oregon. And you're right, we are 50th in the country. We're still 50th and declining in number of minutes. But the one thing that COVID has done and the advice that came out of the state leadership at that time was, until parents are upset about the lack of time for science, that the Department of Education would not feel that it was a priority, because even though they aren't really political, they are kind of political. So the thing that we've seen in Portland is that with COVID, we actually have time for science in all schools in publicly published schedules to parents. And for the first time, we actually are teaching science every day. And we never were doing that before. It was kind of hidden in the schools, and parents weren't aware that their children weren't having science unless they were asking their children. Apparently not all parents were doing that. What we might be able to leverage is when we go back to face, we now have parents who've seen their children doing science or helping their children doing science. How do we bring them in to helping us like raise the hue and cry of the lack of science education that's happening in our elementary schools, and kind of pushing for that, using their voice and their activism to help us achieve that goal, that science is an important part of a core program in elementary and should be taught for all of these reasons that we've been talking about today.
Mm-hmm. I will just tag onto that I mean, our elementary TOSAs are reporting that parents are saying that the students are finding, much more interest and engagement during the actual science time than ELA or math time, right? So I think that then presents a very compelling approach. And I'm kind of sorry, Jeff and Jen are on this call right now, because then we can really go at it. But I think having that parent interest as drivers, the parents are interested in it too, and then they can begin to see how they can participate in citizen science initiatives, and then they can understand the science themselves, and then that becomes like a positive feedback loop, right, for science in general. I don't know. Quick thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the Oregon, the revised test that was assessed that went out a couple years ago, the state didn't want to revise all the individual report cards, so they didn't. They just produced one spreadsheet that's posted on the ODE website, if you ever found it. So even the 2018-19 data won't include science, even though it was assessed, because that assessment wasn't ready for publication at the time of those documents, and they won't add it. So we actually are going to have an even longer time without data. And one of the things, that we hear as a STEM Hub director from parents is they're assuming that districts know the standards and that the kids are getting access to what's required. That is what they think. They might want STEM, or they might want, because they feel like that's something more that kids want, but they think they're getting the baseline. So it's just a horrendous misconception out there that I think has to be corrected in order for them to be mad.
I second that. My daughter's only 3, but my friends who are also parents, they're always shocked when I tell them, like, a lot of kids aren't getting any science. They just don't realize that that's going on, I think. So yeah, there's part of it is getting that message. And not just science, but what should it look like helping parents understand. It's not just reading a science book. 'Cause I think a lot of parents might think, oh, they're reading about science, like, great, they're doing, it's like, no, that's not, that's not what we're talking about. So just getting that education out, engaging parents in NGSS. I feel like when we experience it and how engaging and fun it is, it makes all of us like, yes, this is what we want our kids to do. Just like what Jennifer was saying, this is an opportunity to, since parents are so involved right now with their child's education, to try to reach out. I feel like there's this competing challenge too, which is again, this equity issue of the parents who aren't working from home and trying to school their child and have time to set up the experiments and do the investigations. And then the parents who aren't able to be as involved, and maybe like the screen-based stuff is working for them because they don't have to be there with their child walking them through it. So that's just something else that is on my mind right now.
So my thought is that one is, here's my thinking about this COVID-19 and pandemic, which will be at least almost 2 years to continue until the vaccine becomes available. It's a long time. The life had changed. So there is this expression that we used to think that teaching is a private act, that once you close your classroom, nobody knows what you do because it's a private. Well, COVID-19 opened up the classroom and you just have to work with the parents and technology. It's not your classroom space anymore. It's family space and virtual space, and it's a public act. It's a public act now, everybody knows. So the question becomes, how do we take advantage of this public act to invite the parents in and then technology in? Because we are not going back to the normal, the old normal. People will also say that old normal was not working for racial minorities. So given all of those, what do we do to invite the parents? It's a time to shine. Start from more phenomena-based NGSS instruction. Possibly do a little bit of, try a little bit of computational thinking. Even if not, just the fact that parents see that their kids are doing computational thinking may be just very exciting, just to get started. If you invite us again to do the data science and computer science and to look at the COVID-19 and how to analyze data, I'll be absolutely happy to look into the data sources and why this is a problem. The one slide that I showed you comes easily from dashboards of click it and it'll give you the image. I'm not kidding. It's right there. Every time I see Johns Hopkins coronavirus center data, I say, ooh, Dr. Fauci is looking at this data just like me right now. I'm not kidding. Just knowing some of those strategic moves may make the parents so excited and motivated and say, wow, that's a new science and that's relevant. So I would like to ask all of your leaders of the state and the anarchist jurisdiction, I say that with a pride and compliment because we belong there too. If anything, you will perturb the system. It could have come from you. And if we would like to do more discussion of computational thinking, Ellie is all the expert. Thinking about the data science and COVID-19 and systemic racism, I'll be very happy to do, to continue. If you think about the speaking with, even sending your email as a collection of a body to Jill Biden, saying that we would like to do STEM education and how can we help from day one of your administration. I mean, yeah, why not? As an Oregon Science Association organization. Really, petition of hundreds of people and write the letter and saying we would like to play a role. The reason I'm pushing STEM education is because I'm very jealous of the STEM disciplines right now. They get all the attention. But what about us? We educate the children, the public. What about us?
Yeah, I think that publicly advocating and taking on that role is really important, and maybe we can all kind of touch base, Oregon people. Leah, let's add that to our.
Yes,
We're
I
gonna
know
have a
first.
club and we're gonna do this, and maybe we fit in with Oregon science leaders.
I think this is like an advocacy piece, and that's it's tricky, right? Because when we're in our educator shoes, we're not really supposed to be as political, but when we're in our parent community member shoes, maybe we are political and we are advocating in that way. I mean, I don't know. We can, you know, you guys know what I'm saying. Anyway, yeah, just thinking about how to get that going.
But Leah, I would say that come January 20th, day one, it's not political anymore. It's not political. It's an educational agenda. It's a national priorities. So just wait.
And to be clear, yes, I believe teaching is 100% political. I think it's just a matter of what, keeping aware of our position in our communities and best ways to achieve our goals, depending on our stances, but yes.
So even at the National Science Foundation, I was very excited, and that was when we started doing computational thinking in the service of science about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. But then right now, NSF is going with artificial intelligence. They are one step ahead. Oh yeah, artificial. The idea is that you can imagine that, I know here again, when we did the NGSS, Stephen Pruitt and the leadership, including me, would say, if a student can find the information on Google, that's not worthy of a science instructional time, because students can get it, right? Mm-hmm. Well, right now, the idea is that if students can say, Siri, what is that? Alexa, play Beethoven's number 9. That's not worthy of spending the time, because the kids are actually giving the command to the machines. That's what we just did. You told your elephant to take 5 steps back and forth. The kids are doing that. I know. So that's the image. So,
but I think it's exactly things like that, like unpacking like what it is when you download an app on your phone, right? You are doing all those commands, you are in charge, you are being the agent. And I think it's unpacking that for students and for their families, for the parents who are just like, oh, just do it, right? I need this maps thing, so I'm just going to get it. But, you know, like a little flowchart of what does it actually mean to get it.
So Leah says that you have to leave, and hosting, I think this is good. It's 8:23 and you have been so patient. You very compelled to do it, right? Okay, kids were very compelled to. So it's your charge, Oregon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was
so
great.
Fantastic.
We'll come back. Please invite us back.
Yes, anytime.
Yeah. Please invite us back.
Yeah,
you can always use us whenever you have a new presentation. We'll be your guinea pigs.
We'll come back.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Night, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Leah, would